Tyler Shultz is sitting across from his grandfather. He's 23 years old. He's brought evidence, printouts, lab reports, quality control failures, blood samples diluted 100 to 1, test results so wildly inaccurate they're basically random. His grandfather is George Shultz, former Secretary of State, advised 5 presidents, negotiated with Soviet leaders during the Cold War. A legend. And right now, he's on the board of directors of a company called Theranos. Tyler slides the papers across the table. "Grandpa, the tests don't work. Patients are getting false cancer results, false HIV positives. This isn't just bad science. People are making medical decisions based on this." George doesn't pick up the papers. "Elizabeth gave me her word." "But the data! Are you calling her a liar?" Tyler looks at the man he's idolized his entire life, the man who taught him about integrity, about standing up for what's right. And that man is choosing a Stanford dropout over his own grandson. "Grandpa, I'm calling her a fraud." George's face hardens. "If you go public with this, the family will not support you. Theranos has hired David Boies. Do you know who that is? One of the most powerful lawyers in America. They will bury you." Tyler is 23. He's broke. He lives with his parents. And the most powerful people in Silicon Valley are about to declare war on him. But here's the thing. Theranos isn't just lying to investors. They're running tests at 40 Walgreens locations. Real patients, real blood, real consequences. If he stays silent, people die. If he speaks, his family disowns him. So here's the question. How does a 19-year-old college dropout convince a room full of former cabinet secretaries, 4-star generals, and billionaires to bet everything on a technology that doesn't exist? This is the story of the greatest con in Silicon Valley history, and it starts with a voice. 2003, Stanford University. Elizabeth Holmes is 19 years old, a sophomore studying chemical engineering. She has an idea. What if you could run 240 medical tests with a single drop of blood? No more needles. No more waiting rooms, no more expensive lab visits. Just a finger prick, and within hours, you'd have results for everything. Cholesterol, hormones, cancer markers, HIV, everything. Her professor is skeptical. Miniaturizing lab equipment is one of the hardest problems in medicine. You can't just shrink a blood analyzer and expect it to work. The physics don't scale. Holmes doesn't care. She drops out of Stanford. She's going to change the world. 2004. Holmes raises $6.9 million, mostly from family friends. Her pitch is simple. Democratize healthcare. Make testing accessible to everyone, everywhere. And here's where it gets interesting. Her father was a vice president at Enron. Yes, that Enron. The company that collapsed in one of the biggest corporate fraud scandals in history. Keep that in the back of your mind. By 2010, Theranos has raised over $100 million, and Elizabeth Holmes is everywhere. TED Talks, Fortune conferences, magazine covers. She's not just pitching a product anymore, she's becoming the product. She studies Steve Jobs obsessively. She starts wearing black turtlenecks exclusively. Same brand, same style. She lowers her voice, and I mean that literally. Her college roommate later confirms it. Her ex-boyfriend confirms it. Her natural voice was much higher, but she trained herself to speak in this deep, authoritative baritone. She also trains herself not to blink during interviews. Watch old footage. It's unsettling. It's hypnotic. Employees later describe her stare as reptilian, This is performance art. She's not a scientist presenting research. She's a prophet selling a vision. And the vision is seductive. A world in which no one ever has to say goodbye too soon. By 2013, Theranos is valued at $9 billion. Holmes is worth $4.5 billion on paper. She's 29 years old, the youngest self-made female billionaire in history. Forbes puts her on the cover. This CEO is out for blood. She's compared to Steve Jobs, Thomas Edison, Einstein. President Obama names her a U.S. ambassador for global entrepreneurship. And then there's the board. Henry Kissinger, former Secretary of State. George Shultz, former Secretary of State. William Perry, former Secretary of Defense. James Mattis, four-star Marine General, later Secretary of Defense. Sam Nunn, former U.S. Senator. Bill Frist, former Senate Majority Leader and cardiac surgeon. Notice a pattern? These are Cold War heroes, defense strategists, political operators. But where are the scientists? Where are the lab directors? Where are the people who actually understand blood chemistry? There's one medical expert on the board, Bill Frist. One. The rest of the board was chosen for one reason: credibility by association. If Henry Kissinger believes in Theranos, how could it be fake? 2010. Theranos partners with Walgreens. The plan? In-store wellness centers where customers can get blood tests on demand. Walgreens is desperate. CVS and Walmart are eating their lunch. They need innovation. They need a headline. So they invest heavily. And here's the kicker. They skip due diligence because Holmes demands secrecy. This is proprietary technology. If we show you how it works, our competitors will steal it. Walgreens executives later admit they never saw the technology work in person. They just trusted the board, trusted the hype. 2013. Safeway CEO Steve Bird goes all in, spends $350 million remodeling 800 stores to accommodate Theranos testing centers. $350 million. The partnership launches with massive press coverage. September 2013, Theranos is valued at $9 billion. A reporter interviews Holmes, asks the obvious question: how does the technology actually work? Holmes responds, a chemistry is performed so that a chemical reaction occurs and generates a signal from the chemical interaction with the sample, which is translated into a result, which is then reviewed by certified laboratory personnel. Read that again. It's word salad. It sounds impressive, but it means absolutely nothing. The reporter presses, can you be more specific? Holmes smiles. I'm not going to tell you. It's a trade secret. In Silicon Valley, secrecy is considered genius. In medicine, it's malpractice. But nobody asked the next logical question. If the technology is so revolutionary, why hasn't anyone published peer-reviewed research? Why hasn't the FDA approved it? Why are there no independent audits? Nobody asked, because they didn't want to know. This is called a reality distortion field. Steve Jobs' colleagues coined the term. It's the ability to make people believe in something so completely that evidence becomes irrelevant. Holmes weaponized aspiration. She gave people permission to believe in magic. And here's the psychology. The board wasn't chosen for expertise. They were chosen for status. When you're a billionaire investor and Henry Kissinger tells you this is the future of medicine, what are you going to say? Show me the data? No. You're going to write a check, because if you don't, and this thing succeeds, you'll look like an idiot. This is how con artists work. They don't convince you with evidence. They convince you with status, with prestige, with the idea that you're part of something historic. And by 2013, everyone wanted to be part of Theranos. 1701 Page Mill Road, Palo Alto, California, Theranos headquarters. The building is split into two zones. The front, sleek, minimalist, Apple Store aesthetic. This is where investors visit, where the press tours, where the magic happens. And then there's Normandy. That's the code name for the real lab, where employees actually work. Employees in Normandy are not allowed to speak to employees in other departments. Badge access is restricted. Even senior staff can't access certain areas. This isn't a lab. It's a black site. 2012. Engineers are trying to make the Edison devices work. Edison, named after Thomas Edison, these are Theranos' proprietary blood analyzers. Small, sleek, revolutionary. Except they don't work. They produce wildly inconsistent results. Same blood sample, run it twice, you get two completely different readings. Some tests show 50 to 70% accuracy. The industry standard is 95% or higher. Engineers raise concerns in meetings. Sunny Balwani, Chief Operating Officer, responds, "You're not a team player. If you can't handle the pressure, leave." 2013. Erika Cheung gets hired. She's 23, fresh out of UC Berkeley. She's excited. She believes in the mission. Within weeks, she starts seeing problems. Quality control tests are failing. Proficiency tests, the tests required by regulators to ensure accuracy, are failing. Blood samples are being diluted far beyond acceptable ranges. She raises concerns to her manager. Her manager says, "That's above your pay grade. Focus on your work." Here's what Theranos was doing. They couldn't run most tests on the Edison devices, so they bought commercial blood analyzers from Siemens and other companies, removed the logos, ran the tests the traditional way. 85% of Theranos tests were run on commercial machines. The revolutionary technology barely existed. And when pharma companies or investors came to visit, Theranos staged elaborate demonstrations. The Edison machines in the demo room were preloaded with results. Sometimes, employees would run tests off-site at Stanford labs, then manually input the data. One whistleblower later testified, "We'd get a call. VIPs are coming tomorrow. Make sure demo room 3 is ready." That meant, make sure the machines look like they're working. April 2013. Tyler Shultz gets hired. Grandson of board member George Shultz. He's 22, Stanford biology grad. Idealistic. His grandfather personally recommended him. Within months, Tyler sees the same problems Erika saw. Blood samples diluted 100 to 1. Acceptable range is 1 to 5, maybe 1 to 10 max. Proficiency testing failures, covered up. Fake demos staged for visitors. He raises concerns internally. He's told, "This is proprietary. You're not cleared to ask those questions." Late 2013, Tyler compiles evidence, emails, lab reports, quality control failures. He meets with his grandfather privately. "Grandpa, the tests don't work. Patients are getting false results." George Shultz doesn't look at the evidence. "I trust Elizabeth. She's doing something extraordinary." This is the moment where belief becomes ideology, where trust becomes faith, where a former Secretary of State, a man who negotiated arms treaties with the Soviet Union, refuses to look at evidence. 2014. Erika Cheung sees a patient result, false positive for HIV. She sees another, falsely elevated cancer markers. She later says, "I started seeing quality control failures, proficiency testing failures, and I became really scared for patients." She tries to raise concerns one more time. Sunny Balwani calls her into his office. He doesn't yell. He's cold, controlled. "You're not smart enough to understand what we're building. If you can't see the vision, maybe you don't belong here." Erika quits in November 2014. April 2014. Tyler Shultz quits after 1 year. He tries one last time to warn his grandfather. George refuses to listen. Tyler goes to New York State regulators. They ignore him. So he does the one thing he has left. He contacts a reporter, John Carreyrou of the Wall Street Journal. Let's talk about the psychology here. This is called organizational silence, or a climate of fear. When employees know that speaking up will destroy them, they self-censor. Sunny Balwani created a culture of psychological terror, screaming in meetings, legal threats against anyone who questioned the technology, NDAs weaponized. Employees couldn't even talk to each other about their work. And if you tried to blow the whistle, Theranos hired David Boies, one of the most feared lawyers in America. They sued you, followed you, pressured your family. Tyler Shultz spent $400,000 in legal fees defending himself. His own family turned on him. George Shultz stopped speaking to him. In toxic workplaces, the truth becomes the enemy. Loyalty becomes silence, and silence becomes complicity. This is how good people let bad things happen. 2014. John Carreyrou, Wall Street Journal investigative reporter, gets a call from Tyler Shultz. Carreyrou is skeptical at first. Theranos is worth $9 billion. The board has Henry Kissinger, George Shultz, James Mattis. How could this be a fraud? But Tyler provides documents, lab reports, emails, quality control failures. Carreyrou contacts Erika Cheung. She corroborates everything. He contacts other former employees. They all tell the same story. Carreyrou spends months verifying every detail. Because if he's wrong, his career is over. Summer 2015. Theranos learns the Wall Street Journal is investigating. Elizabeth Holmes hires the lawyer who took Bush versus Gore to the Supreme Court, one of the most powerful attorneys in America. Boies threatens the Wall Street Journal with lawsuits. He sends legal threats to Tyler Shultz personally, demanding he recant. Tyler refuses. Theranos' legal team starts surveilling Tyler, following him, pressuring his family. And George Shultz? He sides with Holmes, tells Tyler he's destroying the family name. Carreyrou publishes. Hot startup Theranos has struggled with its blood test technology. The article is devastating. Theranos runs most tests on commercial machines, not proprietary tech. The Edison devices are unreliable. Employees raised safety concerns and were silenced. The article goes viral. Elizabeth Holmes goes on CNBC. Mad Money with Jim Cramer, she calls the Wall Street Journal report tabloid journalism. She doubles down. This is what happens when you work to change things. First they think you're crazy, then they fight you, and then all of a sudden, you change the world. She's not defending the technology. She's defending the story. No specific allegations addressed, just emotion, just narrative. We're saving lives. That's what matters. CMS, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, inspects Theranos' lab in Newark, California. Their findings? Deficient practices that posed immediate jeopardy to patient health and safety. CMS moves to shut them down. Theranos voids tens of thousands of test results, 2 years' worth. False cancer markers, false HIV positives, incorrect hormone levels, all notified. Surgeries, treatments, life decisions, all based on lies. Walgreens terminates the partnership, sues for $140 million. Safeway terminates the partnership. They spent $350 million, got nothing. Forbes revises Elizabeth Holmes' net worth from $4.5 billion to zero. And then the relationship is revealed. Elizabeth Holmes and Sunny Balwani were secretly romantically involved. They'd been together since 2003. She was 19, he was 38. Balwani had no medical background, no scientific background. He'd worked in software. And this relationship was hidden from the board, from investors, from employees. Holmes is CEO. Balwani is COO. A massive conflict of interest. Balwani wasn't just her enforcer. Together, they built a company on fear, secrecy, and lies. 2018. The SEC investigates. The depth of the fraud becomes clear. Theranos told investors it would generate $100 million in revenue in 2014. Actual revenue? Less than $100,000. Holmes claimed Theranos devices were used on military helicopters in Afghanistan. Completely false. Holmes forged pharmaceutical company logos, Pfizer, Sharing Plow, to create fake endorsement letters. March 2018, the SEC charges Holmes and Balwani with massive fraud. Holmes settles, pays a $500,000 fine, gives up control of the company. She's barred from serving as an officer or director of a public company for 10 years. September 2018, Theranos officially shuts down. 800 employees laid off. $9 billion to zero. Investors lost nearly $1 billion. Collective delusion, confirmation bias, sunk cost fallacy. Powerful people publicly back something, their reputations staked. The trap closes. Admitting fraud means admitting they were conned. And the more invested, money, prestige, identity, the harder to walk away. George Shultz. He introduced Tyler to Theranos, publicly endorsed Elizabeth Holmes, told the world this was the future of medicine. Tyler brought him evidence. George had two choices: admit he was wrong or double down. He doubled down against his own grandson. Smart people, foolish beliefs. Not because they're dumb, because their identity is tied to the lie. If the lie falls, they fall with it. January 2022. Elizabeth Holmes goes on trial for wire fraud. She testifies in her own defense, stating that she believed in Theranos' technology and accusing Sunny Balwani of controlling and abusing her. The jury convicts her on 4 counts of defrauding investors, acquits her on 4 counts related to patients, and is deadlocked on 3 others. In November 2022, she is sentenced to 11 years and 3 months in federal prison. July 2022. Sunny Balwani is tried separately. He is convicted on 12 counts of fraud and conspiracy and sentenced to 13 years in federal prison. He maintains his innocence. Former employees Tyler Shultz and Erika Cheung are later recognized for their roles in exposing the company's practices. In 2021, Tyler reconciles with his grandfather, George Shultz, shortly before George's death at age 100. For patients, the consequences vary. Some received inaccurate results involving serious conditions, including cancer markers and infectious diseases. The full scope of the medical impact is difficult to measure, but federal investigations confirm that unreliable testing affected a significant number of people. Today, Theranos exists primarily as a case study in business schools, law programs, and medical ethics courses. Its rise and collapse are documented in court records, regulatory findings, and investigative reporting. The events surrounding the company continue to influence conversations about corporate governance, startup culture, and oversight in healthcare technology. The facts of the case are now part of the public record. What they mean, and what should be learned from them, remains a matter of interpretation.